welcome back to the Unglandore Model Railway. In this video, I'll be reviewing the Hornby Railway's 14XX. This model I purchased last Monday at Lord & Butler for a price of £49.95. The 1400 by Hornby has a bit of a bad reputation for running. Various YouTubers such as Sam's Trains have a bit of a disliking towards this model, but it's my time to show and see if those problems are true or not. It's time to take this model out of the box and show the details up close and personal. Here we are on the turntable. I've noticed that with the Hornby 14XX is that the later versions of this model, or the newer versions, doesn't have a spring on the rear wheels, and with layouts of a bit of an incline. Because of that, it would prevent the second set of driving wheels from gripping, which they have the traction tires on, and if you have a bit of an incline, it may prevent them from gripping onto the tracks. But fortunately, with this model, it has a pretty good spring and a new pair of traction tires courtesy of Peter from Lord & Butler. Going down to the details of this little tank engine, has a lot of detail. It may be a plain green Great Western livery, but the little details of it point out. The only downside, in my personal opinion, is the smokestack or chimney, which has not been painted. It is in its bare metal. I can understand why, because you have to remove the funnel or smokestack so you could remove the body from the chassis of the locomotive. Just little details like that just sort of frustrate me a little bit with its model. But now you'll get a little bit closer with the details so we can see what this locomotive has to offer. Here we are, a little bit closer to the model, and the Great Western livery has been beautifully applied with the lettering, the number. Despite the fact that this is an old model, it's almost as good as the new version of the model, with some excellently applied details. And there's the non-painted smokestack or funnel. It's cleanly applied, the paintwork. Sadly, there is no cab. Unfortunately, even on the new version of this locomotive, made by Hornby of this year, it's pretty much the same tooling in the body aspect and the cab. If you want a version of this locomotive which does have cab detail, I would advise you to wait until the dapple version comes out next year. Molded handrails, apart from these two, and that one. Displays the model. It is a very cheap model, but hey, it has, even cheap models have some character, and it has it in spades. The coal load is beautifully made and applied. The windows, the buffer beam number. You would think that this is a very new model on how excellent most of the details are. Amazing that it's 40 odd years old. We go down to the other side again, nicely applied. We go down to the front end of the locomotive. You just look at that. The only downside, to my opinion, of this model is the cab windows. A little bit of more finer detail could have been put in there. But apart from that, excellent. If you want to learn the sort of course on how to upgrade of Hornby 14XX, I would suggest watching Double O'Neill on how he did an upgrading of a 14XX. He has a lot of great ideas, in my opinion. Usually we'll go straight to the history of the locomotives I review, but because the 14XX was built around an auto coach system, I thought it would be an excellent idea to show off the ways these operated the auto coach system by showing off the ways they pulled and pushed the coaches. We'll go to the display case to show off these various versions of the way it operated. So here we are with the first setup with a basic auto coach, what the 1400 would look like on basically a typical branch line. They would usually operate with two auto coaches, but the ways that they operated these auto coaches is quite fascinating. And to my knowledge, not many people have showed off the setups for the auto coaches and the 1400s. So I thought it would be an excellent idea to show all these little solutions off. This is the first one. In a second, I shall show you a second one. And here we are with the first setup with the two auto coaches. It just amazes me that this is pretty much the equivalent of the DMU of the 1920s and 30s, with the fireman in the locomotive itself and the driver able to go to each end of the train depending on what direction the loco is going, and still have a good line of sight of the track. It's quite fascinating. He did have problems with maintaining this, but seeing it in operation is truly amazing. And now we'll carry on to the last two setups for this locomotive. So here is the second setup with the 14XX. I know it's quite basic, and I know a lot of experts, model experts and locomotive experts may be saying, why am I showing off these setups? I'm doing it so that newcomers to the hobby or anyone who would love to learn more about the 14XX gets a chance to learn in a nice environment. Now we'll just get the other coach and we'll demonstrate the ideas with both of the auto coaches. And here we are at the typical formation of the auto coaches. And the last run is pretty much with the auto coaches in front of the 1400, but I'll show you that either way so you'll get an idea of what it would look like in real life. And here we are at the last formation with the auto coaches with the 14XX. Not many people showed off how the 14XX operated with the auto coaches in its formations. I thought it would be an excellent idea to show off how they operated them. I hope you all appreciate the hard work. It's not difficult, but studying up the 1400 is a bit of a joy. But I, for those who already know how they operated with the auto coaches, I'd like to say thank you very much for your patience. And for those who did not know how they operated with the auto coaches, I hope you learned and enjoyed this little bit of history on the how the 1400s operated with the auto coaches. For that, we go to the history of the 14XX. The Great Western Railway 14XX was designed by Charles Collett, built between 1932 and 1936, with a total of 75 locomotives built. They were originally based on the 517 class. They were designed in mind for the Great Western Railway's new type of coach, the auto coach, which enabled push-pull working, and the class proved to be highly successful at this task, allowing them to operate on small branch lines with ease, with saving time by not needing to turn the locomotive round to perform passenger services. They performed pretty well at freight as well. They continued on until 1956, where withdrawals began, until from up until 1965, withdrawals was concluded, with a total of 4 locomotives left in preservation, and the remainder was sadly scrapped. In fiction, the 14XX gained fame in 1953 as being part of the Titford Thunderbolt film, and in the Railway series by Reverend Wilbur Awdry, the 1400 was known as Oliver, which I bet a lot of my viewers probably have known about this little famous tank engine. Now it's time to go down to the track and show how useful this little Hornby 14XX can be. Here we are at the track with the Hornby Railways 14XX. For this running session, I thought it would be an excellent idea to run it with this blood and custard auto coach. Joining this locomotive will be the Batman 64XX, also with an auto coach, this one being the chocolate and cream. As well as that, we have the Lima Great Western Rail Car. It's pretty much the evolution of the auto coach and what we see today on railways in the DMUs and or the EMUs, which we see every day. Just amazing that it all began with the auto coaches nearly 100 years ago. Now it's time to let these engines show us what they are made of. And there we are, another splendid running session concludes. The Hornby Railways 14XX is an excellent running locomotive, despite the problems that they do have, and it is well documented that the 14XX by Hornby has, in the past, has some difficulties. My thoughts on the new version which they brought out this year is, well, from what I've seen from Sam's trains, I don't. It if you got a flat layout, 100% flat, or just have a little bit of an incline, you should be fine. If you have a pretty big inclined hill on your layout, don't expect it to be able to go up it. But these older Hornby 14XXs seem to do the job a lot better from what I could see. You can find these locomotives easily on eBay or any other retailers. They're currently out of stock with Hornby right now, but you but don't take these older locomotives for granted, because these are just as good as the new one. In some cases, they pretty much share the same tooling. The only difference is the spring on the rear wheel. That's the only thing that makes them different. But as I said, if you have a decently level layout or just have a little bit of an incline or hill, it should be fine. That concludes my review of the Hornby XX. I would recommend it, but I would check your own layout before you're buying the locomotive. If you like the video, please like, share and subscribe to the Lone Ranger Motoring channel. If you have any ideas for future videos, please write them in the comments, because we always read looking at every comment you have, and my brother is always happy to answer your comments. With that said and done, see you next time.